This show is sponsored by Mighty Capital, the go-to venture capital firm for product-first companies like Airbnb and Amplitude. Learn why they are dubbed the best value for the dollar invested at mighty.capital. I'm SC Moadi, founder and chair of Products That Count, a 501c3 nonprofit engaging over 500,000 product managers. Our mission is simple: help you build great products through groundbreaking research, prestigious awards, and top-notch programming like this award-winning Top 1% podcast. Whether you're aiming to boost your career or turn your product team into a competitive advantage, this is your gateway. Visit productsthatcount.org and begin your product leadership journey. This particular series is hosted by one of the first chief product officers in the world, Lenny, and each episode is a masterclass in product leadership. Renee, over to you.
Hello, today I have with me Ami Vora. She is the Chief Product Officer of Faire. Ami, it's so great to see you. Thank you for being here. And I just want to start by saying congratulations on being a finalist this year in our top CPO award.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Renee. It's so great to be here.
Yeah, I've really been looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better. But before we dive in, why don't you just 60 seconds or less, do a quick intro, tell us about you, what you do for Faire, and maybe for those who aren't familiar, a little bit about the products that Faire has.
Yeah, totally. 60 seconds, that's a good challenge. Faire is a wholesale marketplace. And so we connect local independent retailers with brands around the world. So if you're walking down the street in your neighborhood and you see all these little stores, you might think, where do they get their goods? And that's a pretty inefficient and complicated and expensive process today. And so what we do is try to make it really easy. And so a lot of my job is getting to work with and think about these customers that are really small businesses who are trying to create local community, which is something I'm super passionate about. A little more on me. So I'm Ami, born and raised in a mining town on the East Coast, and have spent the last 20 plus years on the West Coast working in tech. I also have 3 children, so I've spent a lot of the past 10 years kind of shoving quesadilla into mouths. But other than that, have had the really great pleasure of getting to work on some of the biggest apps in the world: Instagram, Facebook ads, WhatsApp. Now I'm here at Faire. And then outside of that, I write a Substack and LinkedIn blog called The Hard Parts of Growth. And that's all about lessons I've learned that hopefully can be shortcuts to other people as they think about product and leadership and scaling.
I love that. As you know, we're very passionate about sharing best practices and learnings. And I love that you've got your own blog. I did not see that, but I will most definitely check it out. So let's dive in, if you will. A lot of our essence as leaders is built up by a series of experiences. And I know I can say for myself, I refer to my previous products as my children.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are grown up. Unfortunately, some of them have sunsetted. I'm not going to say pass away because that gets too weird.
No. Yeah.
But they really are a big part of our stories as a leader. So I'd love to just get started by hearing a story of the highest impact product where it's had like the biggest, like left you with the biggest learnings and really defined you as a product leader.
Yeah. I have been so lucky to get to kind of touch a lot of different products, but one of the stints that I'm most proud of is getting to work on WhatsApp. WhatsApp is a product that's just always been really close to my heart. It has brought me closer to my family. I have extended family around the world. I remember talking to one of my cousins after 2 of my kids were born and saying, you have to come to America. You haven't been here in 30 years. My kids are growing up without you. And she said, no, I see them every day on WhatsApp. Like, I know them. I am there with them. And that is just the feeling that we constantly tried to create in WhatsApp, which is no matter who you are, no matter how tech savvy you might be or you might not be, no matter your position in life, this is an app that is working for you. It is going to work on your behalf to connect you to the people who are most important in your life. And you never have to think to yourself, how do I use this? How do I present myself? What's a tool? What do I need to learn in order to do this? You just open the app and it's like you're face to face with someone. Um, and that was just such a pleasure. It was such a pleasure to get to be part of that story. And one of the things that so in addition to kind of getting to work on that product and lead product and design as we grew it into the largest messaging app in the world, um, was really personally getting to learn more skill sets for myself. So the way that we went about building that product was by trying to go really deep into what was the original vision of simple, reliable, private. You know, what was this app initially built for? And then how could I steward that into something that would continue growing, continue extending, where we could be simple, reliable, private, and also build a new business on top of it, and also bring more privacy to more people, and also bring more people into this connected world where they could just have access to their friends and family. And as part of that, I just needed to learn a lot of new things as a product leader, right? A lot of the WhatsApp job, I think PMs, a lot of what we do is flow to where the water is lowest. Like whatever the team needs, whatever the product needs, you figure it out. And so every PM job is different because of that, because you're stepping into like a different world and a different team structure and a different customer need and kind of a different painting of the future. Um, and so what WhatsApp kind of demanded of me was just a lot more like direct product thinking, where you're looking at the pixels every day. You're thinking, how do we bring something that's really unified and really consistent? Um, and that was just like a whole new way of looking at products for me.
Yeah, I there's so many elements about that story that I love. I love the personal connection to the product that brings meaning, gives us our why. I love the impact. You know, not just the personal connection, but I mean, how many users does WhatsApp have?
Over 2 billion.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? Like, I can imagine working on a product that touches 2 billion product. I never had that pleasure. So that has to be really rewarding. Little
It's a
mistakes
privilege.
become big mistakes when you're
Yeah,
touching 2 billion, right?
it's a privilege. It really is a privilege. Every time that I get product feedback, constructive product feedback, I always remind myself it is a privilege to get to work on products that people care about. And the fact that they have an opinion, the fact that they feel strongly enough to share it and talk about it, that's just a reflection of how lucky we are to get to work on something that people care about.
I agree 150%, plus 1,000. Let's bridge into from kind of, your defining product, amazing product, by the way, I'm an active user, um, to your superpower. Like when you think about all of those experiences, all those products, you would not be in your role if you didn't have some kind of superpower or secret sauce. What is your superpower?
Um, I think what people who have worked with me would say is that I bring a really simplifying lens to everything we need to do. And I think really hard about what is the future really going to look like and what's the few most important things we've got to do. And then I try to pair that with an appetite to actually execute the change. Executing change is hard. It can be
Right.
unpopular, it can be tough on people, but it is the thing that ends up working in the world. And so you have to like not only see the future and the few things that need to happen and be diligent about making sure those things happen. You also have to say, okay, like let's push this rock up the hill. And if I need to do a lot of that pushing, I'm willing to do it. Um, and then I try to build and develop really talented teams. And I think a lot of that is by again, like taking this angle of simplicity and just understanding, what do they like? What does every individual person want? What is already magical about them? And how can I reflect that back to them so they can really own that sense of, here's the thing I'm good at, here's the thing I want to grow at, here's a way for me to do it. Um, and those kind of three things of like trying to see the future and be really clear about what's most important, match that with the appetite to like get it done, and then build teams to actually support that vision, all through this lens of, let's make everything as simple to understand, as simple to do, as simple to ship as possible. I think that's what I do well.
I think that's brilliant. When you look at your team and you think about that simplicity lens, that it makes a ton of sense, but it's hard. It's really hard to do. Do you have any recipes or formulas or secret sauce on how you actually get your team to kind of follow that simplistic, clear vision?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that was just in the water at Facebook or Meta was this idea that execution eats strategy for breakfast, like, and that no matter how amazing your strategy was, customers didn't care. People cared about the products that were in their hands. And so you kind of consistently learn this thing of, you could have the perfect strategy and poor execution and you would lose. But if you had a pretty good strategy and excellent execution, you might not win immediately, but you knew exactly what was going wrong. And then you could go back and improve the strategy. You've got the execution machine ready to go. And that's how you iterate your way to a great strategy. And I think that goes hand in hand with this idea of simplicity, because it really removes the burden of, you have to get everything 100% right all the time, because this is going to be your one shot and you have to plot out the first order effects, the second order effects, the third order effects in order to get this right. Because no matter how perfect that strategy is, if your execution isn't great, you're not going to win. And no one's ever 100% right. And so
Right.
taking the idea that like, we have to have a pretty good strategy, it's got to be 80% there. But that just de-risks this idea that we can take a simpler path, because it just gives us a whole lot more tries. It gives us like a lot more tries at the problem. So first round doesn't have to be totally perfect. That's okay. Of course, that's, also a function of the kind of work we're doing. We're working in software or not, we're working in something where the first round does have to be perfect. We do have a lot of tries. But I think when you know that, and we think about really what are the risks and what are the benefits of trying to make something simpler, it's just a lot easier to embrace it.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think that that's a super smart perspective. A lot of the products that you worked with before Faire were very consumer facing. I guess at some level, small business acts and behaves a little bit like a consumer, but for solving kind of a more of a business problem. Would just love your perspective on how you view your customers, how you embrace them. What's your philosophy and relationship with your customers?
Yeah. I mean, I think talking to customers is the best part of my day. It is, I mean, they are small businesses. They are out there hustling every day. They're trying to create something in the world and create a space for their local communities. My whole family in India is all in wholesale retail, or sorry, a local wholesale or local retail. And so I also kind of grew up watching the dynamics of
Mhm.
how small businesses operate and how unpredictable that is. Um, I always think about, whether it's here or whether it's in other jobs, I think about, it's so easy to get distracted from the customer, especially as an organization grows or changes. There's so many things to think about. You have to think about, like, what does my manager want? You have to think about, like, how do I get alignment? You have to think about, what's my strategy? Um, And it's really easy to build feedback loops to those things. Like it's, I think, like a very easy feedback loop that a lot of us build by default is like my feedback loop with my manager. You know, what do they think? What do they need? How do they think I'm doing? And just like keep on focusing on that. And that's important. But like the most important feedback loop I think we can build is the one with the customer, where you say, what am I shipping for them? How do they feel about it? What am I learning? What do I do next? Um, and I think when you can build that, we're not just better at our jobs, we're actually happier. Like that is, for most of us, the mission of what we're trying to do is make customers' lives better. And so when you get that feedback loop, it's just so additive and like such a good foundation for how to think about what you do. And when you can get everyone in an organization pointing outward at the customer, it means you're not spending your time talking to each other about like kind of internal stuff that customers don't care about and shouldn't care about. It means you're standing shoulder to shoulder and really all looking at the same future for the same customer. Um, and so that's something I really try to invest in is what are all the ways we can better understand the customer, you know? And there's so many easy ways that I think it's easy to gloss over where like you might think, oh, I have to like set aside a whole day and I have to do all of these things. But there's all these like kind of shortcut ways you can watch reviews on YouTube. You can like look at social media for what people are saying. You can read customer support tickets. You can use the product. So there's all these ways to kind of get that peek at customers. Um, I think the hard part is just like, especially when you're in product, I feel like we always have this like ticking clock in our heads of like, what's my ROI on this 30 minutes?
Yeah,
And
of
a lot
course.
of customer thinking and work is not going to have 30-minute ROI the same way that like writing a spec or doing a task is. It just has a much longer term ROI where you can build like a framework and an intuition around what needs to happen. It just makes your product better and your life and job a little bit happier.
Yeah, yeah. As you were telling your philosophy and story about this, I couldn't help but think that how do you navigate what I call the noise versus signal? Like, at what point do you know that your intuition is likely correct? I mean, there's never 100%. And how often do you have to talk to them? How often do you have to see the pattern before you know?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I think a lot of making these kinds of decisions is living with the fact that you might not know, you know? And if you do know, it might take years, especially as you get more senior. Like these feedback loops of did I make the right decision just have to take longer and longer. And so I think what we all have to do is figure out like what are the principles by which I'm going to make these decisions? Like what do I think the future looks like? And what evidence do I have that that is reasonably correct, that I'm making like the best educated guess about the future that I could make with the available data? And one of my shortcuts is that I think all of us have like a different set of data that helps us build a picture of the future. And it's really tempting with how much information is out there to think, okay, I've got to go deep on all of it. I have to go deep on the customer experience. I have to go deep on like the dashboards. I got to go deep on external market data. I got to go deep on financial models. I got to go deep on absolutely everything that like could help me build that picture of a future. And whenever I do that, I often find myself just like, whew, like too much information, a little bit overwhelmed. And so my like observation is that I think everyone has their own shortcut through that by finding the type of exercise that helps them build conviction. You know, like I worked with one manager, the way he built conviction was he looked at those dashboards and he could build a picture of the landscape of all customer behavior just from like those dashboards. And so that was his entry point. And then he would go out and talk to people and like build a complete picture. I think my shortcut is talking to customers and using the product and feeling like I can feel like I have like a little customer on my shoulder that I can represent. You know, I have in my head, this is a customer I know, I understand their motivations, I know how they're going to react. And that helps me build like a, hey, how would this work? How would that work? And then I can go get the data, the market trends, the financial models that help me say, wait, does this make sense or does it not make sense? But finding that initial shortcut is really, I think, important to like building your intuition about it.
I think that's really good advice. Often it's not one customer profile. So do you have multiple little customers that sit on your shoulder? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's important as part of that thinking about the future to be clear on who we're building for. And I
Mhm.
think normally it is better to find the people that you're the smaller audience of people you're really, really going to serve with a hypothesis of how you grow that, with a good hypothesis for how you grow that. Um, and really make sure that it's working for the people who are going to be, you know, quote unquote highest value, whatever that means for your product. Um, and so I think that clarity, again, kind of going back to that simplicity lens, I think that that idea of here's the most important is really important. Even when you feel like you want to do something for everyone, it's likely going to be better if you can be clear about who's most important, and then you can be clear about the next steps.
Yeah, I love that perspective. One of the themes on this conversation is like, get the noise away, find the essence of where you're going, and double down on that. And if you solve for that, everything will be a tweak and tune from there. It's really a really great advice. I love that.
I think clarity is so, yeah, I think clarity is so important. I think like the world is so interesting and it's so complicated and it can be so fun to just like swim in the water of that complexity for sure because there's so many intellectual problems that come with it. Um, but I think my style and therefore what has served me better, what's most authentic to me, is to try to find like the clearest path through it and then try to share that as clarity. It also like one thing that it does for me is that um, it removes a little bit the need to be right or the need to know everything because there's no right or wrong. There's just like, is this the future or isn't it? And we all have like a lot of intuition and knowledge about that. And so it just like helps things feel more rational and more collaborative to think not like what's my vision, but just what's the clear vision? Where's the clarity here?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So we're on the topic. We've been on the topic of customer. I love how you're very customer centered. Do you have? I would love to hear a fun story. Like, what's the best customer meeting you've ever been in?
Oh, I've had so many really fun ones, and then also so many really important ones that felt like a punch in the gut, which is what a lot of customer meetings should feel like.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes they
Um,
feel like that.
I I'll tell you about a recent one that's really top of mind. We had here at Faire, we had a customer event where we brought brands and retailers into our San Francisco office, and after the programming, we had a meet and greet. And this woman pulled me aside and she said, listen, I have to tell you my story. I am a nurse manager at the labor and delivery unit of this local hospital. And that's what I do. I manage dozens of nurses, like as they go about, you know, helping deliver babies. But my boss told me a year ago, we need you to run like a gift shop in the new parents ward. And she said, but I said, no, I don't know how to do that. But then she had to, like you do. And she said, and I felt so lost. You know, I'm trained to like run nurses. Like, I don't know how to buy things, how to retail them, how to merchant. I don't know how to operate this store. I know what new parents need, but I don't know what to do about it. And she said, but with Faire, I was able to do everything. I found the products that I knew people would need. I was able to build relationships with the people who made those products. I was able to try new things and return them if they didn't work out. And because of it, this store has just helped, it has just kept growing and growing. And it's helped so many more new parents who are there delivering a baby, who are there for appointments. It's just been a source of like stability and relief and getting what you need. Um, and, I have 3 kids. Like, I know exactly what it's like when you feel so vulnerable as a new parent and so helpless, and you just need somewhere to go that can tell you what you need, can be supportive, can give you whatever products that you need in your family. Um, and so that was just really meaningful. She was crying, I was crying. We were just thinking about all these new families who were being like helped in this moment of vulnerability. And that, I mean, those are the reasons that I feel so lucky to get to do this, because that's what all of these small businesses are doing. They're all trying to create spaces that are really meaningful for their communities. And we get to be part of that. We get to be part of making their lives just a little easier.
Oh my gosh, I really, really like this story. I'm just curious, what percentage of your customers at Faire have virtual storefronts versus physical storefronts?
Yeah, I mean, we operate across a lot of different categories and styles. So we try to serve kind of everyone, people who are hybrid, people who are brick and mortar only, people who are online only.
Got it. Okay. I have to go check out Faire. I feel like I need to go set up a storefront after that story. This is the problem. When I interview smart chief product officers like you, I just want to dive into your products. I'm just so inspired. That's amazing. Obviously, simplicity is your theme. That is super clear. That being said, as leaders, we always have competing priorities against our time. Like, how do you manage your time? How do you think about your time in context of your team, your strategy, your execution? Like what does that pie look like? And
Yeah. I mean, I start with just acknowledging. I mean, a lot of what I try to do is just like try to acknowledge what is normal, and it is normal. It is the human condition to feel like you don't have enough time. And so no matter what I choose, I might still feel that way. And it's okay. It's not a sign necessarily that I'm failing. It's just a sign that like I'm a human and I'm trying to do a lot of things. And so that just like whenever I remind myself of things that are normal, that just helps ratchet down some of the tension. Um, I try to be very deliberate about how I spend my time. I mean, it is the currency that we have. And the way I've found to do that well is to think about how I want to feel in the future and then look backward. I think like whenever I'm like me sitting here trying to look forward, I have all these like super grand ambitions, whether it's like personal or work, or I'm like, we're going to take a vacation every weekend and we're going to visit 30 countries and all these. And like, none of that's rational. I have 3 kids, I have a husband, we're all working. Like, that's not going to happen. But it's so easy to kind of paint these like big, bold, ambitious pictures that are not grounded in reality. But if I think to myself, okay, 1 year from now, how do I want to feel? What do I want to have done? What is realistic? It somehow magically winnows down all of my goals into things that are reasonable to do. Where I'm like, okay, maybe we'll take 1 trip somewhere far away. Maybe we'll take 2 or 3 long weekends nearby. Okay, let's figure out school calendars, work calendars. Where is that going to happen? Okay, that's reasonable. And I try to do the same thing for work, where I say, okay, 6 months from now, how do I want to feel? And in order to do that, what needs to happen on my team? What needs to happen on execution? What needs to happen with the strategy? What percentage of time do I need to allocate to each of those to make sure that happens? Depending on where we are with the team, maybe I'm spending 50% of my time just thinking about the team. Maybe I'm spending 35 or 40. Depending on where we are on strategy, maybe I'm spending 20% of my time on strategy. Maybe I'm spending 30. And whenever I get that, then it's a lot easier to actually block out my calendar and say, okay, I know I need to spend 40% of my time thinking about the product. I'm going to do Tuesdays and Thursdays. They're all product days. I'm going to do product reviews. I'm going to spend the rest of my time looking at customer feedback. I'm going to spend the rest of my time using the product. Whatever I'm doing, I'm going to try to theme those out so that I'm really going deep on the place that I know needs to be successful for that.
yeah, Yeah, that's smart. I like the way you kind of bring it in, make it reasonable, but at least it's far enough out that you're not letting your execution trump, because tactics can sometimes trump the long term, and so there's always like that crazy balance that you have to strive because honestly, if you're not thinking about it, I don't think individual product managers will be
It's really easy to
prioritized.
get reactive. There's so many problems that you have to react to. And so I think keeping that like broad allocation in my mind of like where do I need to spend my time, even if no one's asking for it, where do I need to spend my time to like move the entire business forward? That's a really good kind of governor on what should I be doing today.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, that simplistic view, you're always bringing that simplistic view. And I think that's a really good learning for anybody who has the pleasure of listening to this conversation. It certainly is going to be a new lens that I apply because Lord knows I've got things coming at me every direction. Simplify, Renee. Okay, excellent. Unfortunately, our time is almost up. It went so fast, but I can't leave the conversation without getting your perspective. Asking all chief product officers this year, obviously AI has been a big conversation. Many of us have been using machine learning and AI for years, but this notion of specifically generative AI is having an impact on the role of product management. So I would love your point of view on the role of either AI or generative AI, it specifically on how it's going to impact product management in both the short and long term.
Hmm. Um, I mean, I think one part of product management is just using whatever tools are out there to figure out what is the future and what is the customer need. And I think that's always been true, to your point, even before product managers had a name as a discipline. Like
Yeah.
what you're trying to do is use all the available information and tools in a way that like makes sense. Um, and so like I don't know, 15 years ago, we didn't really do a ton of A/B testing. And now that is just an automatic thing that, of course, you would do. What an important tool, right? Um, and so I think part of product management is just like picking up the tools. And I'm seeing people do this already with a bunch of AI tooling where, uh, you can ask GPT to summarize or improve your spec. You can ask it to comment on what metrics you're missing in your OKRs. You can ask it to generate queries that you can run to better understand some sort of metric or table that you're looking at. And I think in the future, that'll be even more true, where you'll have kind of a co-pilot where as you're looking at a product, it'll say, hey, why don't you make these components visually consistent with other components? Let me just do that. Hey, you're missing like this key step in the funnel that you told me about. Why don't you do this experimentation to like narrow the bands of potential variability on this? And then you'll just know. And I think that's the direction we're seeing right now for a bunch of other parts of building products where you're seeing this kind of co-pilot model. And there's so many opportunities for that in the product space too. And I think one thing that we will always have to do is think about how what we're building makes people feel. I think that is a place where marrying that kind of technical execution knowledge of a co-pilot with like the human knowledge of how are people going to feel, I think that's going to be increasingly important as a product manager.
I love that perspective. It's kind of that marrying of intuition versus data, art
What in
versus
science? Yeah.
science, and I know that when I was in your seat, always product managers. Can I get an assistant? Can I get an assistant to do kind of non-value add work, right? And I love the fact that well, Copilot, obviously Microsoft saw that coming, so they got the name right. But exactly, this assistant. I love this idea of having an assistant, and I think I've heard people say, helping you with like the more repetitive tasks or less value add tasks so you can free your time up. But what I hear you saying is actually maybe even enhancing and catching errors that maybe you miss. And
Or
I'd love
opportunities, yeah.
completely. So, but from that vantage point, do you think, at what point can that co-pilot take over the role?
I think that's really hard. That's really hard to venture a guess on. I think the future is really interesting. But I think there's always a role for people who want to solve problems and think about underlying needs. I think
Yeah.
that's like one of the core jobs, I think, of a PM is think about what do humans need that they might not be able to tell you, that might not express themselves in like immediate day-to-day actions, but that are fundamentally like part of who they are. I think that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. The power of observation, combined with intuition, creativity. So we're not going to be replaced anytime soon.
There's always more problems.
Ami, it's been so much fun having this conversation with you. I just want to thank you very much for
Thank
sharing
you
all
for
of
the
your.
time. Yeah, really appreciate the conversation.
Yeah. And once again, congratulations on being a finalist.
Oh, thank you. Such a pleasure.
This is SC Moadi again, founder and chair of Products That Count. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you like what you heard, be sure to leave us a review on your favorite platform, including Spotify and Apple. And please check out our other resources at productsthatcount.org. They're designed to accelerate your product career and make product the most important function in business. Until soon.